I'm here in Zurich with the president and CEO of Outcrop Silver, Ian Harris. It's a pleasure to meet you here in person.
Yeah, great to meet you in person too, not just a Zoom call.
No Zoom calls anymore, please. We've had enough. You have a very unique story. I think one of the more unique silver stories out there. You have a very high-grade silver deposit that recently came out with a maiden resource. You've come into the company recently with your mining engineer background, and you're now put in charge to move this project forward. So let's talk about Santa Ana. Let's talk about more about where the project is now, what we're gonna see happen the coming year, and what the potential is to see this turn into an actual mine. So what was the initial resource on the project, and what about and the grades? Because this is a very high grade silver deposit.
Yeah, so we're really excited to be in Europe because most people that know the Outcrop story, it was because the spectacular type grades coming out. They see kilos of silver per ton, and that was the story. And then it was a resource comes out, and they're like, okay, the ribbons around it, it's all done, right? But there's a much bigger story, right? First, grade is important for it's important reason. It means every ton you take out, it's how much money you get back when you get that ton out. It's a biggest component. So it says a lot about the economic viability of a project, right? But it's not the only component. One is also, well, of that's in the rock, how much can you get out? And once you get it out, how much do you get paid for it? It's one of the things, a lot of people look at recovery, but they don't look at NSRs. They don't look at how much the smelter will pay you for that material. So these are all little important ingredients that are looking really good at Santa Ana. We had 37 million ounces together between Inferred and Indicated, and depending if it was Inferred or Indicated, between 400 and 600 silver equivalent grams per ton. It's so extremely high, right? And if you look at producing silver mines, we're looking at similar grades as producing mines, which bodes well. It means those ones got into production, has a high potential of this one getting into. And we have this nice runway where the resource was based off of 7 different veins. We've already got 22 veins mapped and channels sampled and looking great and continued high silver content. So we got great things. We got high grade. We're one of the very few true primary silver projects. About 73% of our value is silver. The rest is gold. But there's some other interesting news that we're trying to make sure is understood, and that is the importance of metallurgy and mineralogy that are, if we want to dive into that, we can dive that into a little bit.
Absolutely, that's a very important part of a potential future mine. So what is that looking like? What is these silver veins? How do you mine them, and how does the final product look like?
So first of all, let's talk about the mining component. They are in what in a world sense would be called high-grade narrow vein. So about on average 80 centimeters, almost a meter width. So mining width about a meter. But in Colombia, that's the norm. And there's some big mines. Buritica is one of them. They remember the one that sold for about $1 billion. Started with this very smaller production. They called it pilot production, and grew and grew and grew and grew. And now they're running 2,000 to 3,000 tons a day. You have Marmato, which is a very similar project, which is Aris mining. And they all started similar. So it's, in Colombia, this is a very doable thing. So on the mining side, it's very doable, and you've got labor rates compared to Canada, United States, 7 times lower, right? So it makes a big difference, and they know how to do it. They have the experience and the knowledge. It's a part of the way mining is done in Colombia. But the other part is the metallurgy, because we recently did closed circuit flotation, which was more similar to real life, right? And we got 93% recovery of silver and about 97, if I remember correctly, recovery of gold. But what was really interesting is the silver is a sulfide. So it's not silver entrapped inside of pyrite, or silver inside of a lead, or silver inside of zinc sulfides that then floats, because that's actually problematic because it's hard to get out, right? It can be refractory. In our case, our silver is a sulfide. We're floating, and we're not creating a zinc concentrate that goes to a smelter and they only pay you 75% of your silver, or as a lead concentrate they only get a percentage back, or a really crappy con that they only pay you 80%, right? This is material that's such high grade you could literally smelt it, and that's actually the work we're doing now to look how we could go directly from concentrate into a doré, because because once you get into a doré, you're getting 99% payables, right? For gold, it can be 98, 99.8, 99.9, right? So you're getting the value out. We get that high grade, but we're also going to be able to maintain that value. And you're doing it without leaching, which means from a permitting, environmental, you're high grade, so smaller impact of the overall mining impact. So this means several things. A, the permitting process can be easier, but you're independent of scale. So if it's a very small operation, it's still going to be profitable. Very big operation, more profitable, but you don't need that scale to become economic. So these are the types of things that people look back at how the other mid-tier silver companies, they started off of getting assets into production and growing off of that production. So Santa Ana, I feel, is going to be the cornerstone of this next silver cycle and silver boom.
And from a silver investor perspective, having this approach allows you to grow more from cash flow.
That is correct. So I like to say, well, how are you going to create value for your shareholders? And so it's not a good market. Let's be frank, it's not. It's a terrible market. But understanding that new story, we're seeing the valuation. We're seeing the ability that when people understand this new story, that the valuation is there. We're valued lower than some of our peers, and we're starting to creep that in. We're drilling, so we get eyeballs onto it. Here in Europe, I look at the opportunity to get that new story out. But if you think then of how we're positioned in terms of mining equities or silver equities, because we're such a high percentage of silver, we're more leveraged than other companies. The other one is Colombia has had a bad rap for a while, but it's coming out too. The people are starting to see that this jurisdiction is starting to look pretty good. You see collective mining and others, you see the policy changes, and wait a second. So you have all these different mechanisms that are going to create value for our shareholders, which is very exciting.
And you have quite an experience in South America. You spent about a decade and a half in a couple of those in
That's
Colombia,
correct.
So you know the landscape.
Yeah, so I'm a mining engineer, 25 years, 15 of those living and working in South America. I currently live in Colombia. I've been living in Colombia for the last 2 years. I was senior vice president of Corriente and took the Mirador project to the start of construction. It went on to be the first large-scale industrial scale project in the history of Ecuador. I'm fluent in Spanish. It's kind of where I'm a fish, right? I enjoy those areas and understand. I like being on the ground and undertaking a deep understanding of what it takes to navigate, to take projects forward. I want to be involved in projects that can become future mines, and Santa Ana has the legs on it that could take it into production.
That's excellent. I want to touch on one more point. You mentioned you have about 24 veins that you've mapped out. You've done our initial maiden resource on seven, but most of it was really from 6 veins. And I think that was one important thing that was important in this, is that you did a lot of drilling before, which proved the continuity of the silver veins, that it wasn't just a nuggety effect, that these veins are mineralized. So that, I think, is one way to de-risk the project. But now you're drilling now on other veins. Is that you have a drill rig out there right now? You're drilling on this. So the next steps would be to map or go after these other veins that you mapped out and continue to add ounces.
Exactly, because when you see really high grade results and you see one press release after another press release, the doubt is, oh no, they're just drilling over the same little tiny space over and over again. So the first about 65%, I think, of the resource was indicated. So for those that don't know, and between Inferred and Indicated, it's pretty easy. It's 4 times more drilling, right? But you needed that to develop the geostatistics and to show over each one of these veins, we're seeing the very similar geostatistics, that it holds together along strike, it holds together at depth. That means that when we're going, our goal now is to go over these new targets and just bring them into it's discovered. Because every one that you're adding, it's going to add ounces. We don't have to drill it at the same density. We can go at Inferred because we have the past experience to show how it hangs together and that previous knowledge. So the problem is that it's slow, right? Because these are ore chutes. You're very structurally controlled. We can see them on surface, but understanding where the silver falls out. Underground, it takes some time, multiple setups. We've only done haven't even done 3,000 meters since July, but now we have the knowledge base, and we're getting into that exciting moments where the fruits are bearing.
Excellent. Well, we'll keep an eye out on these drill results, see how the metallurgy comes out, but a lot of value drivers, and I would imagine with the additional drilling, the size of this deposit can really grow. If we were to extrapolate what's already been put into the maiden resource and with the other veins, it sounds like this could potentially be that 100 million plus ounce silver deposit.
We definitely see a pathway to get over that 100 million ounce mark, and we're going to really be able to do run in parallel, de-risking, show how this project could get into production, while also chasing the larger, I think it's a very psychological barrier, independent, getting over that 100 million ounce mark. A lot of ways to create significant value on this story.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian, for your time and for the update, and looking forward to following the story in the coming year.
Thanks.